Our brains have about 86 billion neurons. 86 billion! These neurons are responsible for sending and retrieving information to and from our brains, enabling us to do everything. The brain coordinates our movements like walking, blinking, driving, literally all physical voluntary movements. It's also responsible for our involuntary movements like breathing, our heart pumping, and regulating our body temperature. And our brain is in control of how we use language and understand each other. With our brain's assistance, we have personalities and feelings and emotions. This magnificent organ system makes us individuals, each unique in our own way. The brain gives us our talents and our skills. I absolutely love the brain. I just can't learn enough about this mass of neurons. Without our brains, we are nothing. We are able to use self-control and restraint by using our intelligence and the good manners we learned growing up. I'm Debra, certified master dementia strategist. I've been teaching about dementia and the brain for nearly 2 decades now. Welcome to Answers About Alzheimer's. If this is your first visit with us, oh boy, are you in luck that you found us. We are a loving group of family and professional caregivers, all dedicated to learning how to provide better care, and we are always striving to do better and fine-tune techniques. We are committed to an open mind, and we will implement new strategies to improve our relationships and our careers. As a caregiver, our first priority is to relieve the burden of suffering for the person with dementia. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you'll be included into our family. Today's discussion is about the hippocampus. Such a weird name, hippocampus. It comes from the Greek meaning seahorse. You can see in this picture of the hippocampus that it definitely resembles a seahorse. For once, something that didn't get its name from a person who discovered it with the hardest pronunciation, right? Like Alzheimer's. Not Alzheimer's, it's Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's. Anyway, just wait until we talk about the huge responsibility of this teeny tiny part of the brain. In fact, the hippocampus is only about an inch long. Well, it's just over an inch, 1.18. You just won't believe what is packed into that little tiny thing. The hippocampus is found deep inside the temporal lobes. Right here. And it's kind of at the top of your spinal cord. And we have 2, one in each temporal lobe. As many of you may know, there are many different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common. Between 60 to 80% of dementia is diagnosed as Alzheimer's disease. The hippocampus is damaged very early in the disease process with Alzheimer's disease. The symptom characteristics of a damaged hippocampus make predicting diagnosis of AD easier. Rapid loss of tissue and atrophy, which is shrinking, damages the ability of the hippocampus to function properly. These early symptoms are very characteristic of Alzheimer's. One of the most recognizable is memory retrieval. When the hippocampus is damaged, it makes it more difficult for the person to retrieve stored memories, specifically the more early memories. That's because the hippocampus is responsible for taking a newly learned memory and storing it into another part of the brain that houses the long-term memories. So the hippocampus is actually unable to take a newly learned information and process it and file it away into our long-term memories. This is why someone may not remember what they had for lunch, or when the last time they took a shower, or if they took their pills that day. Something very interesting that our hippocampus does is it regulates our spatial relationships. This lets us know where things are in relation to our bodies. For instance, where the furniture is located around your body and how you move within a space. It also makes us aware of our own body parts and where your body is in relation to objects around you. So, knowing this now, you can see why a person with Alzheimer's disease may be unsteady on their feet or uneasy in their environment. They have trouble understanding their surroundings. People who have Alzheimer's disease may get lost in familiar places or have difficulty getting to and from a familiar place. And this is because of the damage to the hippocampus and their recognition of familiar places. The hippocampus is responsible for retrieving information, recording information, and sending that information to other parts of the brain to record it so that it can reference that information later. If you think of your brain as a computer, let's say you're creating a Word document or you're creating anything on that computer. You have to hit the save button to save it to your hard drive, or if you don't hit the save button, it's gone forever. So the hippocampus is kind of like the save button. If it's damaged, you can't save that information to retrieve it later out of your long-term memory. It's gone forever. It's not stored on your hard drive. Does that make sense? So it also helps us to recognize an object and understand what the function of that object is. We need to be able to access the hippocampus, and this part of our brain is responsible for our ability to recognize an object from the past, what it is used for, and why we need to use it. Something as simple as a pen or a toothbrush. Why do I need a pen or a toothbrush? What does it do? I remember once I taught in a very large senior living community, and one of the aides said that she had walked by a woman who was holding a banana, and she kept turning it around and looking at it, and the aide stopped and asked her if she needed some help. And the elderly woman looked up and said, "What do I do with this?" And the aide said, "You eat it." And she simply looked at it and said, "Oh," and then she peeled it and ate it. It was as simple as that. I think that one of the most amazing things is that the hippocampus is responsible for our episodic memory. An episodic memory is something that is associated with your specific past history. It has to deal with time, place, and emotions attached to those memories. This is so cool. So I experienced this with my own mother. Actually, I learned about it after she passed away, but she could recall certain emotional events of something that had happened recently, but could not recall the details. So, for instance, my mother said to her friend that her daughter-in-law had physically abused her, and she could not remember the time of the day, but she did know that it was dark outside. And she knew that it happened in the living room. And she knew that it was her daughter-in-law, Cindy. But she couldn't remember the time. She couldn't remember the day of the week. There was a study once that a doctor did a long, long time ago where he went in to meet a dementia patient. And when he reached out to shake her hand, he jabbed her with a thumbtack and hurt her. And every time he came back into her room after that episode, she would get very upset. Although she could not remember the reason or the incident that he had pricked her with the thumbtack, she just remembered that she did not like this person, that it was a bad experience. This is something that we as the care partners and care providers, we need to remember. Even though the person with dementia may not be able to remember a traumatic event, they will remember how they felt, and they will remember that there are people that they will recognize that they don't like or trust. The hippocampus is important in regulating our emotions, and it holds on to fear. This can also contribute for people who have PTSD. Not only does this part of our brain regulate our emotions, but it helps us to form new memories and stores them into our long-term memory. This can also explain why people often repeat the same question over and over and over, because they cannot store anything from their short-term memory into their long-term memory. And so, just so that you know, if you're young and you have not yet been diagnosed, you can actually increase the size of your hippocampus by up to 2% with regular aerobic exercise. So I highly recommend that you start increasing the size of your hippocampus by getting your exercise. I know I am. So the next time your person with dementia is driving you crazy, repeating the same question over and over, remember that they don't have a save button anymore. And if they don't like a particular person, it might just be because that person is not very nice. Or maybe they remind them of someone who did them wrong in the past. They may not remember the details, but they can and will remember discomfort, pain, and negative emotions. I would love for you to continue your best practices learning journey with me. It's not easy to navigate dementia, and you can easily get all of the insider secrets that you need at my website. I have many courses, both short for quick results and longer for the serious caregivers and those who want all the answers right now on my website at answersaboutalz.org. It's free to take a look. Can't hurt, right? I also have for you a free PDF download with several different types of dementia, the life expectancies, the causes, and the symptoms involved. This is very, very interesting. So hang in there. I'm Debra Costu. Stay tuned for our next show, and please tell your friends. I'll miss you till next time. Together we can.